Harry's only coming back because he's got nothing to do in California. He's coming back because he's trying desperately to somehow rebuild a life here. It isn't going to work.
Piers Morgan with an amusing riposte. I may have to emigrate to the US. Actually, that would sort of be a fair trade. You know, bye-bye, Piers. I'm happy with that. You go, and we'll take them.
Here in the United States, Harry and Meghan have been making appearances separate from each other, for months now.
I don't think it was a good look, my friend, that whilst the Queen was dying, you and your histrionics of your wife and your relationship and everything dragged her down. I don't think, young man, that your behaviour has in any way respected the monarchy. And by the way, I totally agreed with you when you said you wanted to get out, but then you sold your soul. And the only way you made your money is to slag off the very institution you now want to clasp hold of. I wouldn't have you in this country, but I'm sure you'll be on the way back.
They wanted freedom. They wanted independence. They wanted to build a future on their own terms. But now, 6 years later, the story has taken a remarkable turn. Harry and Meghan are reportedly preparing to make Britain part of their lives again, with their children potentially becoming part of that new British chapter as well.
The fake Duke and Duchess have tonight confirmed a return to the United Kingdom. They informed King Charles on Sunday. Of course, we are going to unpick this story and reveal the truth in a way the mainstream media will not.
And suddenly, one question is dominating the entire royal conversation. Why come back now? Is this really about the children? Is Harry simply missing his homeland? Is this about rebuilding a relationship with King Charles? Or, as Tom Bower has suggested, is there something much bigger happening behind the scenes? Because according to Bower, this may have far less to do with nostalgia and far more to do with purpose, money, reputation, and Harry's relationship with the royal family.
I did say that Sussexes are desperate. Desperate to come back to Britain, desperate to find some purpose in life, desperate to get royal approval again so they can somehow be revalidated. Harry is only coming back because he's got nothing to do in California.
And Piers Morgan has been asking many of the same uncomfortable questions. So today, we're going to break down the biggest reasons being discussed and why this extraordinary return could completely change the next chapter of the Sussex story. When Harry and Meghan left Britain, the message was clear. They wanted a different life, a life away from royal restrictions, a life where they could control their own image, choose their own projects, and build their own commercial future.
I mean, Harry and Meghan moving back to the United Kingdom, and it's funny, Dan, because actually, and you'll know this yourself, you know, when you're writing a book, you're always having this struggle of what are you going to hold and what are you going to include. And I had a fairly lengthy chapter, which is now going to need to be rewritten, about how a friend of Harry's telling me that, you know, he was going to go house hunting, that he was looking, and that person said to me that he was looking in the Cotswolds near Highgrove.
California became the center of that experiment. There were major media projects, interviews, streaming deals, charitable ambitions, and an enormous amount of global attention. For a while, it looked like the Sussexes had successfully transformed their royal departure into a new celebrity empire.
We know from our sources that the neighbours in Montecito do not like them. We know that the big celebrities that they were pals with, that Meghan was pals with before, Oprah Winfrey, Serena Williams, they don't hang out with her anymore. She's got no real proper friends left over there. She only has a mother in terms of family over there, Doria, who I presume will be over here a lot more now.
But 6 years is a long time. And the question now is whether that California experiment delivered everything Harry and Meghan originally hoped it would. Tom Bower's answer is extremely blunt. He has argued that the couple are now desperate to rebuild a life in Britain because California has not provided Harry with the purpose and long-term identity he expected. Bower has even described the situation as a kind of testing of the waters.
He's coming back because he's trying desperately to somehow rebuild a life here. It isn't going to work. Not only has he got nowhere to live, but these charities, the World Child, it's all that's piffling. It's nothing in terms of the real charities. And in Invictus, he's got no important. He can do everything on the telephone or on the Zoom. He doesn't need to be back.
In other words, this may not necessarily be a simple permanent homecoming. It could be an attempt to see whether Britain can once again become a place where Harry feels relevant, connected, and secure in his identity. And that interpretation changes everything. Because if Harry left Britain searching for freedom, why would he now be searching for a way back? This is where Piers Morgan's discussion with Tom Bower becomes particularly interesting. Morgan questioned what Harry and Meghan would actually do if they established themselves in Britain, and Bower's answer was revealing. He believes the Hollywood dream has effectively lost much of its power. That does not mean Harry and Meghan have no money, no projects, or no public relevance. But it does mean the enormous expectations surrounding their California move may not have been fulfilled in the way many people originally imagined. The couple arrived in America with extraordinary global attention. Their interviews generated headlines. Their documentaries generated headlines. Their personal story became a huge media business. But attention is not the same thing as permanent influence. And that distinction matters, because Harry's biggest asset has always been something he cannot completely separate from Britain, his royal identity. He can live in California. He can appear in New York. He can work internationally.
Now, this is Harry desperately trying to find and build a new life in Britain. And I think there's a mood here amongst people, well, don't let's take it out too much on him. But Meghan, I mean, there's no way they're going to have her back.
Yeah.
And he's not going to get the protection he's demanding. So I think there's going to be a marvelous sight of this couple descending.
But the reason the world became interested in Prince Harry in the first place is inseparable from the British royal family. That is the uncomfortable reality behind Bower's argument. Harry may have left Britain physically, but he never completely left the institution that made him globally famous. And perhaps that is why returning to Britain suddenly makes sense.
I think Harry will be fine with it, but on the other hand, Harry is desperate to come back to Britain, as is Meghan, as we've seen. They're pretty well burnt out in California. They're going to run out of money themselves as well in the not too distant future. So whether they really want to side with the Spencers against the father, King Charles, remains to be seen. Charles Spencer is his own man.
Yeah.
He's not going to be influenced by Harry, whether to do it or not.
Now comes another controversial part of the discussion, money. Let's be very clear, nobody outside Harry and Meghan's private financial world knows exactly how much they have, how much they spend, or what their long-term financial position looks like. So claims that they are completely broke should not be treated as established fact.
The Netflix deal, it's dead. The Netflix deal is dead. It's been dead for a while. And Netflix themselves have been distancing themselves from her. Wow. They were doing the As Ever brand with her. Then they said, no, we're not doing that anymore. The deal of, we're going to pay you X amount of $1 million a year, Meghan and Harry, to executive produce these different ideas and these different programs and documentaries. Well, they just kept coming up with tripe. So Netflix said, the deal's now changed into a first look deal, i.e. you come up with an idea, let us look at it first, and we'll decide whether we want it or not.
But Tom Bower has repeatedly raised the possibility of long-term financial pressure, and the logic is straightforward. A California lifestyle at their level is extremely expensive. Homes cost money, security costs money, staff cost money, travel costs money, maintaining a global public profile costs money. And the question is not necessarily whether Harry and Meghan can afford their lives today.
They are horrendous, actually. And unfortunately, they've come with a terrible attitude because they're going to make things that are easy for them, see the king now and then twist it. Meghan's going to make her book out of it, and Harry is going to make money out of it. It's just too awful. Meghan's wanted to make her money for a long time, so she'll use everything there. She'll have many more things to take care of.
The bigger question is whether the business model they created can continue producing the same level of income and influence years into the future. Bower's argument is that Harry may be looking ahead. If California no longer provides the same opportunities, Britain could become increasingly attractive. Not because Britain is cheaper, but because Harry already has an established identity there. His history is there. His charities are there. His family is there. His public story began there. And his royal connection still carries enormous value.
This is honestly the worst case scenario for the British monarchy. It would be one thing if they had moved to Portugal and Harry was coming more. But this truly is the worst case because this is them firmly setting up their alternative royal court in the UK, they are going to force in their half in, half out. And I think looking back at this meeting with Charles and them not telling him, I think they were gauging how he would react to something like this, trying to figure out how soft he would be. And they're clearly seeing weakness.
That is why the return could potentially be much more strategic than emotional. This may be the biggest reason of all. Tom Bower has suggested that Harry is not simply trying to return to Britain. He believes Harry may be trying to find his way back into the royal world, not necessarily as a full-time working royal tomorrow, but perhaps as someone who is once again physically close to the institution. And there is a huge difference. Harry and Meghan once wanted independence from the royal system, but independence comes with a price. You lose the official role, you lose the institutional structure, you lose the automatic purpose that comes with being a working royal, and once that structure disappears, you have to create your own reason to matter.
Netflix are looking forward to working with the palace. They have nothing more coming out with Harry and Meghan. I doubt anything Harry and Meghan can come up with is going to go to Netflix going forward. Because the only thing that Netflix have done with Harry and Meghan that was a success was when Harry and Meghan was taken off the royal family. That ship is done. They have milked that cow. There's nothing left for them now.
Wow, that's a big issue. So Netflix are turning away from Meghan and Harry towards the royal family.
Yeah, and they're doing it very politically correct. And they're making it sound like, it's all smoke and mirrors of, no, look, we're still working with them. It's just a first look deal. Well, you don't get paid for looking at stuff. You only get paid for making things.
Bower believes Harry has struggled with exactly that problem. For most of his life, Harry never had to ask what his role was. It was already defined for him. He was the spare. He was a senior member of the royal family. He had military connections. He had charitable causes. He had official duties. Then everything changed. Suddenly, he had to build a completely new identity. And Bower's argument is that perhaps that new identity has never fully replaced the one Harry left behind.
I think they're even broker than we originally thought or imagined. The fact that they're crawling back this fast, I think that last little trip where they snuck in with the kids, that was them laying the foundation. They were laying the groundwork. And I know we've all felt for months now, and really the last year or two, I think Meghan Markle, she dies inside when she sees how great Princess Catherine is doing, when she sees how great Prince William is doing, when she sees how they're embraced, and the Kardashians want nothing to do with her, Martha Stewart wants nothing to do with her, Oprah wants nothing to do with her, the Netflix money has run dry, that house is dilapidated allegedly, and so now they're going crawling back.
So, what happens when you return to Britain? You are suddenly closer to the people and institution that gave your life its original structure. And that is why Bower believes royal approval could be one of Harry's motivations. What about King Charles? Then there is Harry's relationship with his father. Whatever has happened between them, the relationship between a father and son does not simply disappear. And Harry's return to Britain could make reconciliation much easier. Instead of thousands of miles separating them, there could potentially be regular contact, family meetings, time together, and perhaps, eventually, a rebuilding of trust.
I think they're trying to test the water, see what it's like, see if they can rebuild their reputations, and if it doesn't work out, they'll go back to Montecito.
It's really interesting. The king, who is suffering from cancer, and we know that, we don't know the severity of that, but he was criticised roundly on social media yesterday. Oh, you must have known, you must have known. We are told he was as blindsided as William was by finding out on Sunday. But then we also read this morning.
But there is a major obstacle: trust. Piers Morgan has repeatedly highlighted the enormous damage caused by the years of public criticism, interviews, and revelations surrounding the Sussexes and the royal family. And that creates an obvious problem. Returning to Britain does not automatically erase the past. It does not erase Oprah. It does not erase the documentaries. It does not erase the accusations. It does not erase Harry's memoir. And it certainly does not erase the breakdown between Harry and Prince William. That history will follow them wherever they live.
That traitor Prince Harry emerged victorious overnight in Washington, D.C. His goofy grin not covering up an alarmingly bald hairline, those the words he used about his brother Prince William, as he celebrated pulling one over his father King Charles, a weak monarch battling terminal cancer who has now allowed the real cancer that risks destroying our royal family back into the United Kingdom. And trust me, as the man who broke the news of Megxit in the first place 6.5 years ago, this is just the start of a horror return.
this may be the most important relationship in the entire story, because even if Harry manages to rebuild some form of relationship with his father, the future of the monarchy ultimately belongs to Prince William, and Tom Bower has suggested that Harry may be particularly concerned about what happens when William becomes king. That possibility creates a fascinating question. Could Harry be trying to rebuild his position in Britain before the next generation of the monarchy becomes even more firmly established?
People magazine, the Daily Telegraph, and the Sun newspaper are assuring us that Harry, lovely Harry, just wants to be close to his beloved relatives. But I won't just let the MSM rewrite history about this vile guy and about how vile he has been in regards to the family he claims to now care about. So do you remember when King Charles and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, had just had those terrible cancer diagnoses, and he went on American television to make clear that he no longer even considered them his real family?
Bower has argued that Harry may fear losing status or influence in the future. And whether or not that prediction ultimately proves correct, the logic behind it is easy to understand. The closer Harry is to Britain, the closer he is to the royal family. The closer he is to the royal family, the harder it becomes to treat the Sussexes as a completely separate story. And that could eventually create pressure for a new relationship. Not necessarily a return to working royal duties, but something. A role, a charitable position, a public connection, or simply a relationship with the institution that Harry once left behind.
That brings that story back to life. As far as the Sussexes are concerned, is good news because it gives them an opportunity to get more publicity. That's what they want. They want to be back in the news. They can't stand being out of the spotlight. And so I'm sure they'll both jump on the coattails of Charles Spencer's book. But whether he cooperates himself with the Sussexes, I have my doubts. I don't think he'd want to be tarnished.
But there is another enormous problem: security. For years, Harry has argued that bringing his family back to Britain would be difficult because of security concerns. Piers Morgan raised exactly this contradiction when discussing the possible return with Tom Bower. If security was previously such a major obstacle, what has changed? That question is unavoidable. And Bower's position is that Harry should not expect the British state simply to provide the level of protection he wants. So if Harry and Meghan really do establish themselves in Britain, the security question could remain one of the biggest sources of controversy.
The fact is, he spent 6 years and a fortune that he's got to pay back now trying to get security and not succeeding because he's not a working royal. The one thing that's come out of Highgrove and Buckingham Palace is that the king says, well, you'll have to remain non-working royals and you're not going to have security. So how the bloody hell is he going to pay for the big house? How the bloody hell is he going to pay for the security? Is there something we're not being told here? Because there's something going on.
Because this is no longer just about where they want to live. It is about who pays, who protects them, what status they receive, and whether returning to Britain gives them access to privileges they gave up when they stopped being working royals. That is a political and public relations minefield.
You've got to remember that Harry has got the chance of building up a charitable life here, so he's been serving charities, and I think Meghan will try the same eventually. She has said, okay, I'll give it a year. I'm not going to lose nothing in England if I come to England. And it's good for the children to have a change of scene. So don't take it as permanent.
Well, I thought about this last night. You rent a house for 6 months and see how it goes. There's a poll saying she's the least popular royal. There seems to be a poll out today saying that a majority of Brits don't want them to come back.
Then there are Archie and Lilibet. This may be the strongest argument that the return is more serious than a short visit. Because children create roots. School creates routine. Friendships create community. And once children begin building a life somewhere, moving again becomes much more complicated. If Harry and Meghan genuinely establish their children in Britain, it could create a permanent connection between the Sussex family and the country they left 6 years ago. The children would spend more time around their British relatives. Harry could spend more time with his father. The next generation could develop a stronger connection with Britain. And suddenly, the Sussex story becomes less about Harry and Meghan as independent celebrities, and more about a royal family living in closer proximity to one another.
Well, he's been always planning to come back on his terms. He's now coming back on our terms, so to speak. He won't get state security, which costs a minimum of £10,000 a day. There's no way that Rabeck is going to change its judgment now. Now, it might change if a threat is actually discovered against him and his children. And that has always been Rabeck's point of view. There is no threat to the life of Harry and Meghan in Britain that they have discerned. That is the issue. So I think it's the sort of thing which has been raised, but he's just going to have to settle down in the depths of the Cotswolds and get on with life.
That could have enormous consequences. This is where another fascinating question emerges. Harry was born in Britain. He grew up inside the royal system. Britain is his homeland. His memories, family history, and public identity are deeply connected to the country. Meghan does not have that same lifelong connection. So, if Harry genuinely wants to rebuild his life in Britain, the question becomes, does Meghan want exactly the same thing? Tom Bower has suggested that the two may have different reasons for considering a return. Harry could be looking for identity and purpose. Meghan could be thinking more about the children, lifestyle, reputation, or future opportunities. And that difference matters, because a successful long-term return requires both of them to want the same destination.
Well, I think it's an amazing development, but also it's a bit of a mystery. I mean, why have they come back? We haven't been told. My view, they come back for two reasons. One is they're desperate. It's the end of the run in California. They're out of money, out of luck, out of opportunities. They've hit the buffers, so to speak. But also they've come back because they're trying to worm their way back into the royal family and into British life.
If Harry sees Britain as home while Meghan remains more comfortable in California, the arrangement could become complicated very quickly. After everything Tom Bower and Piers Morgan have discussed, there may not be one single answer. It could be several things happening at the same time. Harry may genuinely miss Britain. He may want his children to know his homeland. He may want to rebuild his relationship with King Charles. He may want a stronger connection with his family. He may want new charitable opportunities. But Bower believes there is something deeper: purpose, identity, relevance, security, money, and perhaps most important, royal approval.
I mean, I think that they are manipulative to the highest degree. But you see, for the Cotswolds, for them, it was a natural destination. It's Soho House. It's where her friend Marcus Anderson has a base. They've been there before. Harry knows it very well. He doesn't need to do much scouting around there. He's got a couple of friends there, to say the least. They'll tell him which schools work. It's an easy place to slip into. And, you know, nowadays, at the present moment, there are loads of houses available to rent in the Cotswolds. Prices have fallen, so that's not a problem.
That is why this story is so fascinating, because 6 years ago, Harry and Meghan were leaving Britain because they wanted a new beginning. Now they may be returning to the same country because the new beginning did not completely replace what they left behind. And that is the irony at the center of this entire story. Harry may have spent 6 years trying to build a life independent of the monarchy. But according to Tom Bower's interpretation, he may now be discovering that the royal connection he tried to escape is also the connection he cannot completely replace.
Harry never did that. Harry's far too unintelligent to be able to understand that there's a quest for the truth and actually balancing fable from fact and fiction. He's just a blunderbuss. So, of course, the real question is, for the royal family, is its fate. And it's constantly under attack, it's constantly in doubt. It's never going to disappear. The monarchy is here for many, many, many more years. But it's struggling at the moment, and it could have done without Harry intervening and saying, I want to come back. And we could probably do without Charles Spencer telling the truth, his truth, about the marriage.
The big question now. So the biggest question is no longer simply, are Harry and Meghan returning to Britain? The bigger question is, what do they want when they get there? Do they want a quiet family life? Do they want their children to grow up closer to their British relatives? Do they want to rebuild Harry's relationship with King Charles? Do they want to restore their reputation? Or is Harry quietly trying to find a path back toward the royal world? Piers Morgan has raised the questions. Tom Bower has offered his own brutally controversial explanation. And if Bower is right, this is not the end of the Sussex story. It is the beginning of an entirely new chapter.
Well, I think you're right, Jeremy, but I'm sure absolutely they won't get royal protection. The committee in charge of protection, RAVEC, decided about 4 weeks ago they weren't going to get it, and there's no reason why they should revise their opinion. You've got to remember with Harry, he likes blackmailing, he likes raising the tempo. In the trial against the Daily Mirror, he told a few porkies. I mean, he's not someone who one can actually, from the basis of his own book and what the Netflix series, rely on for always telling the unvarnished truth. So I think what's really happened is that he tried his best to blackmail and force the British government to give him the money, give him the protection, give him what's much more important for him is not the protection, but the status.
Because returning home is one thing, rebuilding trust is another. And trying to find a place inside a family after years of public conflict may be the hardest challenge Harry and Meghan have faced yet. So now I want to hear from you. Why do you think Harry and Meghan are really returning to Britain after 6 years? Is it genuinely about family and the children? Or does Tom Bower have a point that Harry is looking for purpose, relevance, and a renewed connection with the royal family? And most importantly, do you think this return will actually last?
Well, I think in the immediate future, they're not short of money. I mean, they've got enough money from Harry's book and the Netflix deal and the rest to keep going. The point is that they, in the longer term, will run out of money. And I'm sure that's what is terrifying Meghan, who is a very, very money-conscious person, having had a youth which was not flush with cash. I think we'd be appalled if the king suddenly produced any money for them.
Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next major royal update. And don't go anywhere, because on your screen right now, we're recommending another video that takes a closer look at the growing tensions between Harry, Meghan, and the royal family. Click that video now, and I'll see you there.